In 2018, I stumbled across a video by a YouTuber named Cosplay Chris. He took this toy from The Last Jedi and made a pretty cool custom collectible from it. I wanted to make one for myself, and I also had some ideas for some improvements to make it more of my own. The first thing I wanted to improve upon was the metal rod that held the whole ship itself. I looked at the stabilizer strut of the ship, and I knew this is where the support for the whole piece needed to be to hold the ship upright. I hollowed out a lot of the material in there and created a channel for a piece of aluminum that would be strong enough to support the entire weight of the ship. I dismantled the handle as well and stripped out any excess material around the piece of aluminum so the bar would lay flush inside and the handle could be screwed back together and connected back to the main body of the ship. I wanted this to be as hidden as possible, but also have the ship be able to stand freely on the support strut. As for the base, I went with a similar box shape. I picked up a jewelry box at the store and I cut a slot in the top of the box. I was able to slide the aluminum bar through the box, however, it needed something inside to keep it stable and stationary. I crafted a small wedge from some scrap wood I had and attached it with some brackets to the base. The aluminum bar would slot perfectly into this bracket and keep it from tipping over. After this, I weathered the whole ship from top to bottom, making sure to get in all that nice, dirty, rusty, and has been decommissioned and sitting in a hangar for years look. To create the planet's surface, which had a salt flat-like texture and look, the technique that I found, tested, and liked the best was a mixture of coffee grounds and acrylic paint. The combination of the two yielded a nice cracking texture once it was all dried. I wanted to improve on the box design that Chris went with. I wanted the box to have a crystally, rocky exterior, to look like it was a cross-section of the planet. I tried carving into foam pieces to simulate crystals and rock. I carved so many different test pieces and did numerous paint job tests. I could not get this right, or at least what I wanted it to look like. This took me close to a year to finish, partly because of life and work, but also I couldn't stand looking at my failure. That was a hard one with this project. I would fail and put it down for a long time, but failure was okay, because failure pushed me to make something better. Since the foam crystals weren't coming out like I wanted them to, I decided to try to incorporate resin crystals to try to sell the effect. I bought resin, crystal molds, and red dye, but ultimately they looked bad against the foam crystals, and I decided that wasn't the way to go either. One night in frustration, I looked at it and I made a hasty decision. I liked the salt flat planet surface portion, but everything else below that could go. That night I broke all the walls of the box and started crafting a new support structure to make a floating platform. I used some thin balsa wood to fashion a wedge shape that would allow the planet's surface to float, but also allow access to the bracket inside that kept the ship upright. That was a very scary moment when I broke the box and moved forward into making that decision a reality. I then reached out to one of my friends who's a carpenter, and I asked if he could take my prototype and make it out of wood so it would be more sturdy. He made me this perfect box, which was right on spec to what I needed. With some minor trimming of the interior bracket, I was able to fit the structure over everything and attach it to the base and stand it all up for the first time. I was happy I pushed myself to try to do something more and something more creative. The next step was trying to figure out what the cross-section would look like. I was able to look online and find some reference images of the caves from the movie, as well as levels from the Battlefront 2 video game. In addition to the red dye I added to the resin, I also ordered bath bomb metallic powders to give the crystals some sparkle when light would shine through them. At this point, I had already carved out a whole ton of foam, trying to make rock formations that looked like crystals, So I said, why don't I make rock formations that the crystals are embedded in or coming out of? I started carving out holes and depressions. I did a lot of testing and adjusting to get the layout just right, so when you would look through it, you would have that really cool pattern just like you're looking through a cave of crystals. After all the crystals were set, I primed and painted all the rocks and included some red ambient highlights that would be coming off the crystals. Once everything was painted, I did one last test fitting of everything, then glued all the crystals down to the rocks, and then glued all the rock pieces to the base. I also glued the planet's surface portion in place just to ensure nothing would come apart. The last part of this was making the dust plume that was being kicked up. This was the easiest portion of the build. I used a coat hanger and twisted it into the shape that I needed and attached some pillow batting to it with hot glue. I sprayed it down with a nice deep red spray paint and hit the underside with a misting of black spray paint just to give it some shadows. I drilled a small hole just behind the support strut and poked the end of the coat hanger through that hole to keep it all in place. And that's about it. I am very happy with it. It sits proudly on my shelf, and I'm glad I took the time and I didn't rush it. It allowed for me to make better creative decisions as well as work on other projects in the meantime. I have more videos coming of other projects that I've made, as well as new projects I'm starting from scratch, so you'll be able to watch the whole creative process. Thanks for watching.